Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers, a team that I thought overreacted to what was a decent season, in that they, all right, we're going to get rid of everybody at the top and change the whole thing around, and yet I thought they had a decent year. I did. Did they make the playoffs? No. Was it a tough division? Yeah. Is it a tough division again this year? It is. So their overall numbers would tell you they were good enough to make the playoffs, just they weren't in a division where they could, and that could happen again this year. Absolutely could. But with where I've got them predicted to be, if the Metro occupies both wildcard spots, the New York Rangers get into the playoffs. So that's where the question marks come in. Are they going to be better than the Atlantic? Are they going to be able to have better records than teams in the Atlantic to the point where they occupy both wildcard spots? So the New York Rangers, their special teams this year were good. 20.7% on the power play, which was 14th overall, right around the middle of the league. But their penalty kill at 82.3% was 10th. Their goals for, also 10th in the NHL with 176. Their goals against, 155, which was 13th. All these numbers would tell you good enough to get into the playoffs. And the frustration may very well have been that they were close. Now, when you look at their drafting record since 2015, it's been an issue. 2015, the noteworthy draft pick that year is Huska at 184th, but he's still fourth on their depth chart and goal. Reunanen, drafted 98th overall in 2016. He's on the depth chart there. 2017, they drafted Elias Anderson at 7th. Of course, he's moved on. And Hedel at 21st. He's still here. 2018, they drafted Kravtsov at 9. They drafted Keandre Miller at 22. Lundqvist at 28. All three of those players are in the lineup for this year. Lundqvist, very likely to end up with a roster spot right out of the gate. 2019, Capo Caco drafted 2nd overall, and then Zach Jones drafted 68th. Could be a steal there. Caco should take that next step this year. He's going to get every opportunity. 2020, they got Lafreniere at number 1, Schneider at number 19. So Schneider at 19 is one of their top prospects. Not going to be in the lineup this year. The other prospect I've got on the board here is Brennan Othman, who is their first-round pick from 2021. So a lot of their prospects are already in the lineup, and we'll get to that. Their exits, Buchnevich leaves the team, which upset a lot of fans. I think the reason why, they looked at the lineup and they said we need to get tougher. We need to get harder to play against. We need to toughen up our bottom six. That all the moves they made in the offseason seem to be indicating that. Blackwell, of course, taken by Seattle. That hurts. Brendan Smith leaves as a UFA. So does DiGiuseppe. And Howden ends up in Vegas. New faces. Sammy Blais comes over from St. Louis. Barclay Goodrow comes over from Tampa on an expansive long-term contract. McKegg returns. Ryan Reeves comes over from Vegas. Nemeth joins the blue line. And Tenorti joins the blue line as well, likely in a depth role. This is going to be a much tougher New York Rangers team to play against. Reeves can drop the gloves. Tenorti can drop the gloves. They're moves that I look at and I say, so they're getting ready for Tom Wilson, are they? It does feel like that's part of it. So that first game between the Rangers and the Capitals, that could be something to watch. Oh, and it's on the 13th of October. The first time they play is in Washington on the 13th of October. So that feud could be reignited on the opening night for the New York Rangers and for the Washington Capitals. Because opening night is October 12th. There's only 4 teams playing that night, only 2 games. And then we really get into it on the 13th. So Rangers and Washington, maybe get ready to record that one. In case you can't see it live, maybe get ready to record that one. So their forward group is pretty good, and this shows why they were willing to lose Buchnevich and take that risk. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kakko, Kreider, Strome, Kravtsov could be the top 6, although Lafreniere could push his way into the top 6 as well. Lafreniere, by the end of the season, he looked really good. I think he's going to push himself into some more special teams time on the power play. And I think by the end of the season, he has to be playing top 6 minutes, I would think. Again, we had a 56-game season instead of 82. If it had been an 82-game season, Lafreniere might have got himself more into that conversation for Rookie of the Year. Hedel, Blais, Goudreau, Rooney, Reeves, likely roll out the rest of that lineup up front. Although Gauthier, Dryden Hunt, Brzezinski, McKegg, Morgan Barron, who did get to play last year, Gettinger, and Justin Richards, who got into a game last year as well. There's some good depth here. I'll be interested to see how the bottom six works out, because it feels like coming into the offseason, they said, all right, we need to toughen up. And that's what they did with their bottom six, was toughen things up a little bit. The question then becomes, did they give up too much in skill in losing Blackwell and Buchnevich and replacing them with more along the lines of the tougher players like a Ryan Reeves? You know, how much does that hurt? Does it help? What does it do for the team's identity? All these questions we'll have going into this season. Defense is pretty good for this team. It really is. So you've got Lindgren, you've got Fox, you've got Keandre Miller, and Trouba. The other thing that's interesting is this is a young blue line. Ryan Lindgren, Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, all young players. Fox just won himself a Norris Trophy. So the odds of him being a multiple Norris Trophy winner, pretty high, because he's already won one. And then you've got Lundqvist, Tenorti, Nemeth in that group. Hayek is going to be in there trying to get into that spot. But Nils Lundqvist, if he makes it into the lineup, that could be a very interesting look for the Rangers, because it makes the defense even younger, right? And we saw with Colorado this year that during the regular season you can play with a young defense. In postseason it can be tough, because they can be outwitted and outplayed by veteran teams that know how to break through young defenses. So we'll see which players end up playing if Boteto gets into some games. Zach Jones got into some games towards the end of the year, and the aforementioned Reunanen as well. So a lot of options for them on the blue line, but it'll be interesting to see how many veterans end up in that lineup, or how many kids they end up being willing to have out there on the ice altogether. In net, Shesterkin, Georgiev, Kincaid. Apparently the rumors that Georgiev might have wanted out turned out to be untrue. However, is it possible at some point Georgiev gets traded? It's possible. Although if it does happen, and if it's the team deciding to do it, it would likely be looking for depth elsewhere if that was the case. So Kincaid's the number 3, just in case. And as Keith Kincaid showed this past year, he could be decent as a fill-in, right? So we'll see how all this turns out. It's a young lineup. The inexperience means that I expect them to fall beneath some of the more veteran-laden teams. I do have them at 5th in the Metro. Again, is it possible they get into the playoffs? Absolutely. Metro teams usually have pretty darn good records. Being 5th in the Metro, they're still going to have probably a pretty good record. And if last year was any indication, they should at least be a lot of fun to watch, right? So the Cup odds for them currently 25-1, which is not bad. Their last Stanley Cup, of course, was 1994, which was their first since 1940. And it's now been a while since they had their last Stanley Cup. The New York Rangers wouldn't mind building themselves back to it. But it will be interesting to see how all of this comes together. And again, this is why Buchnevich is gone. If you're a Rangers fan that's been upset about the trade of Buchnevich, this is a lineup that already has a lot of guys who provide what Buchnevich should. And Kakko and Lafreniere's goal scoring should get better for both, so it should make up for the loss of Buchnevich up front. So yeah, we'll see how that all comes together. Really, it is, a lot of it's going to be how that bottom 6 all plays together right out of the gate, and how well things go for them. I talked about the New York Islanders this morning, and the Islanders, that bottom 6 is, big part of how that team has success. The Rangers are kind of counting on that same thing. Goudreau is going to be really interesting in that if he's on the 4th line, he's not going to get a lot of points or goals, and that's where people are going to look at that contract and say, that seems like a lot of money for a guy who's on your 4th line. So they may not be done making moves yet. We'll see. But who ends up on what line is going to be a large conversation to be had in about a month's time, when these guys all get into training camp and we start seeing how things should play out. Their schedule, though, it's not that bad, comparatively speaking, with, say, the Islanders, who have that 13-game road trip to start the season. They're in Washington on October 13th, and then the next night, so they start with back-to-back, they're at home against Dallas. So Dallas is going to be watching that game and saying, hey, you guys should go out there and you guys should go all out and play hard, play really hard. And then, maybe they get a tired, beat-up Rangers team the next night. Then on the 16th, the Rangers go to Montreal. On the 18th, they go to Toronto. 21st, they're in Nashville, so they have 2 days off between the Toronto and Nashville games. Then a day, 2 days after that, after a 1-day rest, they're in Ottawa. So 2 Canadian teams. Then they go down south to Nashville, and then they go back up north to Ottawa. Sometimes you look at the scheduling and go, really? 25th, they're at home against Calgary. Then there's a few days off before they're at home against Columbus. And then they go to Seattle for the 31st. So they have 1 day off before they play in Seattle. The travel is not great. Like I said, they're in Canada, then they're south, then they're back in Canada, then they're at home, and then they go out to the West Coast. They have a 1 day off between a home game against Columbus and a road game in Seattle. So we'll see how things go. There are some winnable games in there. But for the New York Rangers, again, I think 5th in the Metro. And to me, they're a bubble playoff team this year. And a lot of it is going to depend on these new faces they have and everybody gelling and getting it all together. And, a good year from Trouba would help, as well as Adam Fox showing that what we saw this past season, that's the Adam Fox we're going to see going forward. If he can put out another Norris-level season, the Rangers have a chance to be a dark horse in the East. But, we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Where do you think the Rangers finish in the Metro? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just tap it upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.